It was just one line, one sentence you barely thought twice about, yet it was like lightning splitting through a dark sky. That one moment, that unplanned comeback, changed everything. You didn't realize it then, but the second those words left your lips, a quiet tremor began to ripple through the entire room. Every mask, every false alliance, every hidden resentment, all of it began to shift. What you said wasn't loud, but it carried the unmistakable frequency of truth. And truth once spoken doesn't vanish. It echoes, it spreads, it exposes. They thought they could contain you, silence you, keep you in your place through manipulation and subtle control. They thought you would play along, smile, and pretend, but you didn't. You said something real, something that shattered the fragile illusion they had spent so long maintaining. People underestimate how much power there is in authenticity. They forget that honesty cuts deeper than any insult, that truth, when it enters a room full of lies, doesn't just speak, it rearranges the entire atmosphere. For a long time, you played along because you valued peace. You watched the games, the gossip, the flattery, and the hypocrisy, and you said nothing. But something inside you changed. You grew tired of pretending, and so, without even realizing it, you became the catalyst, the one who introduced truth into a place that could no longer handle it. That's the paradox of light. It doesn't fight with the darkness. It simply arrives, and the darkness retreats. The moment your words struck, everything that was built on deception began to fracture. People started to whisper differently. Their tone shifted. The alliances that once seemed unbreakable began to crumble. They didn't just turn on you. They turned on each other, because when deceit holds people together, truth will always tear them apart. The bonds formed through fear and flattery cannot survive a moment of reality. They will implode, not because you attacked them, but because your honesty made their falsehoods impossible to sustain. What's fascinating is that your comeback wasn't crafted as a weapon. It was instinct, a spontaneous act of integrity. You spoke what was real, and that was enough to dismantle an entire network of manipulation. The moment truth appeared, every hidden agenda began to unravel. And in that chaos, their true selves started to emerge. The guilt, the insecurity, the projection. They began to accuse, to deflect, to distance. But deep down, they weren't reacting to you. They were reacting to themselves, to the reflection of their own deceit suddenly mirrored back at them. You didn't have to expose them directly. The truth did it for you. One line was enough to pierce through layers of pretense, to reveal what was already collapsing beneath the surface. You became the accidental revealer, the silent witness to their own undoing. And as their unity dissolves into conflict, you can finally see what was always there. The truth standing quietly in the middle of the wreckage, unshaken, undeniable, eternal. The power of a single truth. There are moments in life that arrive quietly, almost unnoticed, but they change everything. It might come in the form of one sentence, one simple, instinctive expression of what's real. You didn't plan it. You didn't rehearse it. You just spoke, because in that instant, silence became unbearable. That single line left your lips, and the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't anger that carried your words, it was truth. And truth, when spoken in a world that feeds on pretension, carries an almost supernatural weight. It breaks through the layers of denial people have built to protect their fragile egos. It exposes what's been buried. It's like opening a window in a room that has been sealed for too long. The air rushes in, and everything stale begins to die. People can live inside falsehoods for years, even decades. They construct entire worlds out of them. Families, friendships, organizations, reputations, all built on a delicate system of half-truths and unspoken agreements. Everyone plays their role, pretending not to see what's obvious, agreeing to maintain the illusion because it feels safer than confrontation. But when one person breaks that unspoken rule, when someone refuses to participate in the deception, everything starts to tremble. That's the power of a single truth. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't require numbers or approval. It simply is. When you spoke, you probably didn't even grasp what was happening beneath the surface. But your words entered a structure that was already unstable, and the moment they landed, the cracks began to show. The people who built their sense of control on manipulation felt something shift. The ground beneath them moved, because truth doesn't cooperate with deceit. It undermines it by its very nature. It reveals the contradictions, the quiet hypocrisy, the emotional dishonesty that everyone has been trying to ignore. In that moment, something sacred was released: authenticity. And authenticity is dangerous to the artificial. It threatens those who survive by pretending, who rely on distortion to maintain power or approval. Your words acted as a catalyst, forcing reality into a space that was sustained by lies. And the moment reality arrives, the false has to begin dissolving. The system of illusion starts to collapse, not because you attacked it, but because it cannot coexist with what's real. Every word of truth carries a kind of vibration, something deep, something that resonates beyond logic. It reaches the conscience of those who hear it, even if they pretend not to. It calls them to account. Some will respond with humility, some with rage, but none can remain unaffected. That's what you triggered, the quiet panic of exposure. And once exposure begins, there's no turning back. The truth doesn't stop halfway. It continues to expand until everything hidden is forced into the open. That's why one sentence can change a room, a relationship, or even a life. Because truth is not just communication, it's revelation. It strips away disguise, burns through deceit, and demands that what's real stand alone. You didn't set out to start a revolution, but your words became one. Every illusion they depended on started to crumble the moment you refused to stay silent. The weight of honesty carries more force than any form of dominance or control, because it aligns with something larger than opinion. It aligns with reality itself. And as that reality continues to unfold, it will test everyone it touches. Some will resist it, others will awaken. But from that single act, or from that one sentence, a new order begins to form, one built not on pretense, but on the raw, unshakable ground of truth. Why they're turning on each other. When deceit begins to unravel, the alliances it held together start to crumble. You can almost see it happening in slow motion. The same faces that once smiled in unity now glance at each other with suspicion. Their words turn sharp, their tone defensive, their trust disintegrates. It's not that something new has entered the picture. It's that the truth finally revealed what was always there beneath the surface. For a long time, their bond was not built on honesty or respect. It was built on a shared illusion. They needed each other to maintain it, to keep the lie alive. And the moment one thread of that illusion was pulled by a simple, genuine sentence from you, the whole thing began to fall apart. People who are united by falsehood are not truly united. They are temporarily bound by fear, guilt, and self-interest. They protect one another not because of love or loyalty, but because each one benefits from maintaining the deception. They share the same fragile secret, that none of them want to be exposed. So when truth enters their circle, panic sets in. It's not just the truth that frightens them. It's what it reveals about themselves. The guilt they've ignored, the insecurities they've hidden, the manipulations they've justified. All of it begins to surface, and they can no longer suppress it. What you're seeing now as they turn on one another is the psychological collapse of a dishonest system. They can't hold the structure together because deceit requires constant maintenance, and exposure makes that impossible. Once truth has been spoken, they start looking for someone to blame. They can't confront their own guilt, so they project it outward. Each one begins accusing the other, pointing fingers to protect their own image. It becomes a storm of self-preservation. The same people who once acted like allies now treat one another as threats. That's how corruption works. It eats itself from the inside once its false unity is disturbed. Their anger isn't truly about what you said. It's about the mirror you've placed in front of them. They see their reflection, and it terrifies them. They realize they've been living behind masks for so long that they no longer know what's real. Your words tore through that illusion, and now they have to face themselves. Some will try to rewrite the story, to twist what happened, to make you the villain. Because if they admit the truth, the whole facade they built will crumble. They will whisper, accuse, and manipulate again. But this time their tactics won't work the same way. The web of deceit they once relied on no longer holds. The truth you spoke changed the atmosphere. It exposed the foundation they thought was unshakable. Now their interactions are filled with tension, with hidden fear. Each of them knows the others are capable of betrayal, because betrayal was what held them together in the first place. And so they fight. They argue. They retreat into gossip and blame, desperate to shift the attention away from the guilt that's consuming them. What's happening now isn't chaos for its own sake. It's a necessary unmasking. The group that once moved as one body now splinters, revealing what each person truly values. Some cling harder to the lies. Others, quietly, begin to see that you were never the problem. The very sentence they condemned you for has become the line that separates the authentic from the false. You didn't cause their collapse. You exposed it. You didn't create division. You revealed the cracks that had always existed. The reason they're turning on each other is because truth has disrupted the balance of deceit. Their world depended on silence, and you took that away. And once truth enters, no matter how small, it begins its inevitable work, to dismantle what cannot stand and to force every hidden motive into the light. The psychology of exposure. There comes a point when the truth no longer stays hidden, when it starts to bleed through the cracks of every falsehood built to contain it. That's what happened the moment your words entered the space. They didn't just land, they revealed. You didn't have to raise your voice or argue your position. The truth itself carried a weight, an authority that needed no defense. It exposed what had been festering underneath the surface for so long, the insecurities, the manipulation, the silent pretenses that everyone agreed to ignore. You didn't bring the chaos. You simply illuminated what was already breaking apart. And the human psyche, when confronted with exposure, reacts not with grace but with panic. People build false versions of themselves because they fear what would happen if others saw their real face. They wear layers of personality like armor, thinking that the more convincing their mask, the more control they'll have over how the world perceives them. But when truth enters that environment, it begins to peel away those layers. It doesn't shout or accuse. It just stands there quietly, undeniable. And the moment those masks begin to slip, people lose their balance. Their entire sense of security was built around keeping the illusion alive, and when that illusion is threatened, the mind scrambles to protect itself. It denies, it blames, it distorts. It would rather destroy relationships, reputations, and peace than admit that the truth has arrived. That's the strange thing about exposure. It feels like an attack to those who've lived in deceit. They interpret honesty as aggression because it threatens the fragile ecosystem of lies they depend on to function. They tell themselves that you're the problem, that you're cruel or arrogant or vengeful because it's easier to condemn the messenger than to confront the message. Their world was held together by shared denial, and when one person stops playing along, everyone else scrambles to defend their version of reality. They'd rather turn against you than turn inward, but exposure doesn't just reveal lies, it reveals character. It shows who can stand in the presence of truth without collapsing, and who needs the mask to survive. When you spoke, it didn't just shatter the illusion they had about you, it shattered the illusion they had about themselves. Suddenly, they were face to face with their own contradictions, their jealousy, their hypocrisy, their unacknowledged fear. They couldn't bear to look at it, so they redirected their discomfort outward. They tried to make you carry it. That's what projection is, the transfer of inner guilt onto an external target. And once that cycle begins, it spreads through the group like wildfire. Each one of them starts projecting onto the other until everyone is running from their own shadow. You didn't have to destroy them. They began destroying each other. The moment exposure occurred, their hidden insecurities began to clash. The false alliances they built started to crumble because those alliances were never rooted in truth to begin with. They were rooted in convenience. When deceit loses its hiding place, it devours itself. You simply became the light that revealed it. This is the psychology of exposure. It strips away the illusion of control. It removes the comfort of pretending. People who have lived for years behind facades cannot endure that sudden vulnerability, so they lash out in every direction, hoping to cover the discomfort. They mistake the pain of awakening for punishment. But the truth doesn't punish. It purifies. It doesn't destroy people. It destroys what is false within them. The pain they feel isn't caused by your words. It's caused by the collapse of the story they were forcing themselves to believe. And once that story falls apart, they're left standing in the open, exposed, unable to hide from what they truly are. The spiritual angle. There are moments when truth escapes the boundaries of human intention and becomes something more, something guided. It doesn't always arrive through careful thought or premeditated courage. Sometimes it simply rises up from within, as if summoned by something greater. You may think it was coincidence that those words slipped out without warning, but deep down, you sense it wasn't random. It felt as though time paused for a second, as though every hidden lie, every silent injustice, and every unseen manipulation was waiting for that precise moment to be confronted. And when you spoke, it was as if the universe itself had been holding its breath, waiting for someone, anyone, to finally release what needed to be said. That is the mysterious nature of truth. It doesn't belong to us. It moves through us. It's ancient, unyielding, and profoundly intelligent. When it finds a willing vessel, someone brave enough to let it speak, it manifests with a force that feels divine. The words might have sounded simple, but their impact carried the weight of something eternal. It's as though the unseen order of existence momentarily aligned, and through you, reality corrected itself. Because truth has a sacred function, it restores balance where deceit has caused decay. It brings light into places where shadows have ruled for too long. You were chosen, not because you were perfect or prepared, but because you were ready in spirit, even if not in mind. There's an invisible rhythm to life, and when that rhythm is disrupted by lies, there comes a time when it must be reset. The world cannot remain out of alignment forever, and sometimes that reset happens through one person's voice. That's what it means to be a vessel for truth. It's not something you control, it's something you allow. In that moment, your soul stepped forward while fear stepped back. And that act, however small it seemed, carried spiritual significance far greater than you could see. When truth is spoken, it doesn't just correct behavior, it shifts energy. It changes the atmosphere, the feeling, the unseen currents between people. That's why those around you reacted so violently. Not because your words were cruel, but because they carried power, spiritual power, the kind that disturbs what is false and stirs what is dormant. They felt it, the exposure, the sudden rush of reality, as it was more than they could handle. Because truth isn't gentle with deceit, it cleanses it, and that cleansing can feel like chaos. But that chaos isn't destruction, it's transformation. It's the soul's way of releasing what's impure. You might have wondered why it had to come through you, why the weight of revelation fell on your shoulders. The answer lies in the alignment between courage and calling. When truth needs a voice, it searches for someone with enough integrity to bear the cost. It doesn't look for the comfortable, it looks for the willing. And in that moment, you were willing to risk misunderstanding, rejection, even isolation in exchange for something far more valuable, authenticity. That willingness becomes a spiritual act. It invites divine order back into a place where moral confusion has taken root. That's why the reaction was so intense. It wasn't merely emotional or social, it was spiritual resistance. Darkness doesn't vanish quietly. It fights, it twists, it blames, because it senses its time is ending. But light, once revealed, cannot be contained again. The truth you spoke was more than just words. It was a spiritual signal, a reminder that the higher order still governs beneath all the chaos of human deceit. What you said wasn't meant only for the ears that heard it. It was meant for the unseen forces that shape destiny. It was the soul declaring, enough. And the moment that declaration was made, the spiritual landscape shifted, the illusion trembled, the light returned. The chaos after truth. When truth finally breaks through the walls of deceit, what follows often looks like destruction. To the untrained eye, it appears as if everything is falling apart. Friendships dissolve, loyalties vanish, and the atmosphere fills with tension. But what you're really witnessing isn't chaos for the sake of chaos. It's truth rearranging the landscape. The moment reality enters a place ruled by illusion, the false begins to crumble. Structures built on lies don't just weaken, they collapse loudly, dramatically, sometimes painfully. And yet, beneath that apparent disorder, something necessary is unfolding. The old order, the one sustained by silence, manipulation, and fear, is being dismantled so that something real can take its place. You might have noticed how the energy around you shifted almost instantly after you spoke. Conversations that once seemed comfortable turned sharp, filled with defensiveness. The same people who once laughed easily now move with caution, studying each other's faces for signs of betrayal. It's because truth, once revealed, alters how people see each other. Every interaction becomes loaded with meaning. Every silence carries weight. They can no longer pretend, and that inability to pretend exposes their true motives. Some rush to protect their image, others retreat into denial, and a few, the rare few, begin to awaken. This is the cleansing storm truth always brings. The human mind doesn't like disruption. It clings to stability, even if that stability is built on deception. So when the truth breaks through, it threatens the illusion of safety people have constructed for themselves. That's why their first instinct is to panic. They interpret the truth as danger because it forces them to confront what they've avoided. They begin to argue, accuse, twist the story, anything to regain a sense of control. But truth doesn't negotiate. It continues to expose layer by layer until every pretense falls away. And when that happens, the result looks chaotic because the false order they depended on is dying. The noise, the gossip, the blame, all of it is the sound of decay. Lies don't go quietly. They resist until the very end. And as they do, they reveal who was truly loyal and who was simply attached to the illusion. This is the painful beauty of truth's aftermath. It doesn't just expose deceit, it separates people. It draws a line between those who value integrity and those who value convenience. Those who once stood together in deceit now find themselves isolated, realizing that their bond was never genuine. It was built on the fear of exposure. It's strange how something so simple, a few words of honesty, can cause such a violent reaction. But truth carries within it the force of correction. It doesn't merely reveal what's wrong, it begins to dismantle it. The world has a natural inclination toward order, and lies distort that order. When truth enters, the distortion has to go, and that expulsion feels like war. But the conflict isn't between you and them. It's between what's real and what's false. The louder the chaos becomes, the clearer that distinction grows. In the midst of it all, it's tempting to feel responsible, to believe that you caused the storm, but what's unfolding was inevitable. The illusion was already fragile. Your words only hastened its collapse. Truth accelerates what was destined to happen. It exposes every hidden fracture, every suppressed emotion, every dishonest connection. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. At first, everything looks messy and overwhelming, but that mess was always there. The light didn't create it. It revealed it. And as everything erupts, the arguing, the distancing, the rewriting of narratives, understand that this is the necessary chaos of revelation. It's the world recalibrating itself, burning away the false to make space for the real. You've become the spark that set the process in motion, not because you wanted to destroy, but because truth could no longer remain silent. What you're witnessing now is the final unraveling of deceit, the purging that always follows when truth decides it's time to speak. What this means for you. There's a certain silence that comes after everything has erupted, when the noise fades and you're left standing there, realizing how much has changed because of one act of honesty. You can sense the distance, the awkward pauses, the coldness in the air that didn't exist before. It's strange, isn't it? How one sentence, one act of courage can separate entire groups of people, reveal hidden loyalties, and expose what was always lurking beneath the surface. You didn't plan for any of this to happen, yet it did. And now, in that silence, you begin to understand that truth comes with a price. But it's not a punishment, it's a purification. What fell away was never meant to stay. What turned against you was never truly with you. And what remains now is clarity, a raw kind of peace that only comes after the storm. You might feel conflicted about it all, the guilt that creeps in when you see the tension you unintentionally caused. You may find yourself replaying that moment, wondering if you could have stayed quiet, if you could have avoided the confrontation altogether. But deep down, something inside you knows the truth had to be spoken. It was never about winning an argument or proving a point. It was about alignment, aligning your voice with your soul, your words with your integrity. When people live for too long suppressing what's real, they become complicit in their own oppression. By speaking truth, you refuse to play that role any longer. What you're feeling now is the cost of authenticity, the inevitable isolation that comes when you step out of a collective illusion. But that isolation is sacred. It's the space where strength is born. It's where you begin to understand that you were never meant to blend in with deception. You were meant to stand apart from it. The people who couldn't handle your truth didn't reject you. They rejected the part of themselves that recognized it. You were the mirror they couldn't look into, and so they looked away. They called you names, twisted your intentions, painted you as the villain, but those reactions were confessions in disguise. Every word they spoke against you revealed exactly what they were hiding from. In time, you'll notice that those who were quietly observing, the ones who said nothing while the chaos unfolded, will begin to see you differently. They might not say it out loud, but they'll remember that when everyone else bowed to fear, you stood firm in truth. That kind of courage leaves an impression. It unsettles people, but it also inspires them. Some will start to question the lies they've lived within, not because you demanded it, but because your integrity gave them permission to. That's how truth spreads, not by force, but by example. There's something deeply liberating in realizing that you don't need to be understood to be right. You don't need validation to know your worth. The storm you triggered was proof of your impact, not your failure. You spoke words that disrupted the comfort of deceit, and though it caused division, it also created space for authenticity to emerge. The people who are meant to walk with you will find their way through the wreckage, not because you convinced them, but because they too are tired of pretending. The rest will fade into the noise of their own denial, still clinging to illusions that can no longer protect them. So now you stand in the aftermath, maybe alone, maybe uncertain, but undeniably free. You can feel the difference inside. The air is cleaner, the weight has lifted, and even if you're surrounded by misunderstanding, there's a quiet conviction that can't be taken from you. That is what truth does. It isolates, yes, but it also refines. It burns away what was false and leaves behind something unshakable, a deeper awareness of who you are and what you were always meant to carry. And though this phase feels heavy, it's only the beginning of transformation. Because the moment you chose truth, you also chose freedom. And with that choice, life itself begins to rearrange around your courage. And now, as the dust begins to settle, you'll notice something powerful. The silence is no longer heavy. It carries a strange sense of peace, almost like the calm after a long and furious storm. Everything that needed to fall has fallen, and everything that remained standing is exactly what was meant to. What was once confusion now begins to make sense, and what felt like betrayal now feels like revelation. You start to see that the pain was never punishment, it was purification. You were being refined, shaped, and separated for something far greater than what you could see when you were surrounded by noise. Life has a mysterious way of removing what can't go with you before it blesses you with what's meant for you. That's what all of this was, not destruction, but divine reordering. You were not meant to stay hidden among those who feared the light you carried. The rejection you faced wasn't the end of your story. It was the announcement of your rebirth. Sometimes the universe allows you to be misunderstood so that you learn how to stand on truth without needing applause. You weren't cast out, you were set apart. The fire that burned around you wasn't meant to consume you, but to reveal your strength. Every false relationship that collapsed, every mask that slipped, every truth that surfaced, all of it was preparation. You've been purified by exposure, and now you are free to walk in your purpose unbound. This is what awakening looks like. It isn't peaceful at first. It's raw, disorienting, and emotional. You lose what you thought you needed, but you gain what you were always meant to have: vision, wisdom, and clarity. You begin to see through every disguise. You no longer chase validation because you understand that truth validates itself. And though some people may never understand your silence, your detachment, your transformation, that's because your path was never meant to be explained, only lived. You are no longer here to prove who you are. You're here to embody it. The same people who whispered against you will one day speak your name with awe, not because you sought revenge, but because you rose higher without it. They'll see the peace that surrounds you and remember the chaos they tried to create. They'll realize that what they meant for harm only revealed your power. Life always brings balance, and when it does, every wound you carried turns into wisdom, every tear becomes testimony, and every ending transforms into a beginning. What they buried in ridicule, the truth will resurrect in honor. So stand firm now. You've walked through the fire and emerged golden. You've watched the illusion collapse, and in its ashes you found yourself. That's what this journey was all about. Remembering who you are, reclaiming your strength, and understanding that no betrayal, no rejection, and no lie can destroy what was divinely placed within you. You are walking proof that light cannot be silenced and truth cannot be undone. And though the road ahead is unknown, one thing is certain: it leads to restoration, to redemption, and to a peace that no one can take from you again. The storm wasn't your ending. It was your awakening. Your initiation into the life you were destined to live, standing fully in your truth.